quickly to go through the agenda, we want to, for those that haven't seen Lumyx before, we're going to kind of reframe the problem space, give you a quick description of the value proposition of Lumyx, and take you through two or three specific demo scenarios. We've got a homicide demo, a sort of ease of case building experience, and then also want to show you the call detail records or CDR capabilities in the product today. But I am joined, I'm David Scruggs. I'm a co-founder and leading our sales and go-to-market efforts. And let me ask Phil Thrasher, go ahead and introduce yourself, Phil.
Hi, everyone. I'm Phil Thrasher. I've been writing software for 20 years professionally, and super big nerd. So I've been doing it for quite a bit longer than that as a kid, unprofessionally. I was a first engineer at Gray Shift, working on the Gray Key. Really love this space, love helping public safety, love helping the public servants, the heroes in this industry. And yeah, just really happy to be here and build this products for you guys.
I'm Alec. I'm also one of the co-founders here. And as Thrasher mentioned, we've been working with technology for a really long time in a bunch of different sectors, but stumbled into public safety back in the very early days of Gray Shift, working on the Gray Key, building some cool technology there. And then that merged with magnet forensics. So we've got a lot of different experience on a lot of different analysis products and just products for public safety in general. What we learned is that there's just more and more data for each one of these cases, and more data the merrier, but the side effect of that is it's becoming more and more challenging to create a clean, crisp, compelling presentation for something like the courtroom when you've got a jury. So that's kind of the mission that we have here at Lumyx, and that's what we're trying to build.
Yeah, and I think to feed off Alec's comments, there's a mountain of products and data on the front end that are helping criminal investigation divisions get out there and make these arrests. Whether it's body cams or flocks or cell phone extractions. It's really then there's a cliff between, I think, the agency's ability and the detective's ability to recompile that data into something that's visual, engaging, understandable, and easily explained to command staff, leadership, juries, DAs, judges, those that don't interact or engage or know the case to the same level as the detective themselves. So really the ability of inserting data from all different formats and then up-leveling that data for the ease of explanation and illustration. I want to ground you just in kind of the workings of Lumyx, and I think our website and this visualization does a really nice job. So all the data points on the right, whether it's Celebrite or Google or Magnet or Burla or Toyota warrant returns, every file that you have is part of a case file that has latitude, longitude, timestamp, any sort of location data. Any of those files can be auto-magically dragged and dropped into Lumyx. We will strip out that location data and we will create an interactive, engaging map of all the movement that data represents. Now, you can pull in data from multiple suspects and victims. You can pull in multiple data points of a single individual to corroborate location. But it all sort of starts with that baseline location evidence. By narrowing down the time frame of that evidence gives you then kind of your case window. And then on the left-hand side, it's the opportunity of enriching the map with all of your other supporting case evidence. And in many instances, that can be audio, video, multimedia, block camera hits, just all of the other supporting evidence to create what we refer to as a crime line, or the timeline of events and the chronological order of evidence that then will marry together the location data with all of the supporting evidence in a clean presentation walkthrough. So that is like when we wake up in the morning, that's what we're building and that's what we're driving towards. So I think it's a great opportunity to sort of pivot if I stop sharing and walk through just a couple of really common scenarios that we present most times when we're engaging with new prospects.
Absolutely. So this right here is our basic homicide case that some of you may have seen, and if you have, there's some new features in here you're going to see as we go through it. And if you haven't seen it, this is basically a very simple version of a homicide case with just one location data source. This is the location data off the head unit extracted from Burla of a Ford F-150. We dragged and dropped that data set in here, and then we were able to just press play on the data. So you're instantly, just in a few seconds or a few minutes, able to come in, do some initial analysis on the direction of the data, where that device dwelled, and just glean some insights very quickly with just that play button, but also using these sliders to browse through time and just quickly scrub down into the most relevant portions of time. Then we came in and individually added each one of these events and labels on top of that location data. So like this is a phone call, and we'll step through these one by just go ahead and pressing the start button here. So the start button is going to take us to our very first event, where we have the suspect's black Ford 1 F50 entering the gas station here. As I'm playing this video, you can see it's lining up with the location data off the head unit. I'll do it one more time. F-150 entering the gas station, Burla extraction data entering it as well. Then we can see the suspect in the gas station. We've got a little bit of surveillance footage of that. Circling around the gas station on the map, we've got one more piece of surveillance footage here, and it's the F-150 leaving the gas station. So if I press play with map here, I'm getting the video played back with a little bit of that location data on the F-150 departing. At this point, he's starting to head to the crime scene. And as he's heading there, he's making 3 outgoing calls to the victim. So the victim was his ex-girlfriend in this case, and we have 1, 2, 3 outgoing calls. Then he makes his way to the crime scene itself, which was the victim's house. We have the crime scene photos, cross streets, the bullet casing, 911 call recording, and in this case, just a photo of the outside of the house, but you could upload any of the relevant crime scene photos for an event that you deemed crime scene. We also have these customized label or icons that we put on each one of the events that kind of just give the viewer a little bit more context just at a glance as you're stepping through the presentation. After the crime occurred, we've got a piece of footage off of the neighbor's Ring doorbell camera. So if I play this one, it's kind of interesting. Perfectly lines up with that head unit data once again. And he's basically fleeing the scene at this point. So we've got a number of different evidence items here. We've got some more surveillance footage. We've got text messages. We have a flock camera hit as he was fleeing the scene. Another text off the device, outgoing call. And he basically makes it into this parking lot where he then gets out of the vehicle. And if I press play on this location data here, you can see Burla head unit vehicle data stops, but we have body cam footage in the forest nearby. So he was arrested just after he fled into the woods. And then a couple minutes later, we found the firearm just nearby in that same forest. So that is the gist of a basic homicide case in Lumyx. But I want to show you guys a little bit more on how you actually get here. So we're going to create a micro case on the call right now, and we're going to do that using a UFDR from a mobile device, read a report from a mobile device. All I have to do to create a new case, I'll just do that one more time. I come to this drop down, I press create new case. I just titled this one UFDR case. Save and open. Now we can just go take our UFDR, the whole thing, drag it in, and press the start button. So even if you have a massive UFDR, hundreds of gigabytes, the other day we had somebody upload a 100 gigabyte UFDR and it processed, saved, and was viewable in 3 minutes in Lumyx. And that's for a couple of reasons. We don't actually upload the entire UFDR to the cloud. We, Thrasher wrote this technology so that it runs directly in your browser. So all of the data processing when you drag and drop any file into Lumyx happens on your browser. And we parse and comb out all the location data from that file directly in your browser. So we're not sending those up to the cloud. Any of that PII or sensitive media items that might be in that UFDR are not getting sent up to the cloud. only the location data that we parse out of it is. So that's what you're seeing happen here, and that's why it's able to go so much quicker than uploading the whole thing. Or sometimes we hear that folks are able to upload and view the data in Lumyx faster than if you're not on a forensic computer, just double-clicking a reader report and opening it standalone. So we're getting close to it being completed here. Give it a couple more seconds. Then I can just press the continue button. We can see just a quick summary of how much of it worked. Skipped a few records here, missing lat longs, and saved 72,000 records to the case. I'm just going to press this big continue button. And it is going to load all of this data onto the map. So we're dropped into effectively an empty timeline with a populated map that has all of the UFDR's location data on it. We can see here that it happened to be 18 months of location data off this device. We're able to quickly look at all the different sources that data came from directly in Lumyx from the UFDR. In this case, we've got a few flyer points out here that are probably very high horizontal accuracy. If I toggle this horizontal accuracy on, oh man, there's some massive ones. I am going to filter those out. Those are cell towers. I think for now, that should give us a good baseline of accuracy for this case. But for this particular case in general, it was a narcotics case. And so what I'm interested in is this path that the device took from Wilmington up to this town over here called High Point. So if I hover over that, I'm seeing in the bottom, it's all kind of at the very end of the extraction here. So I can narrow that time frame down. And I'm going to do something advanced here for a moment. We have this kind of advanced mode that allows you, it's called adaptive zoom mode, allows you to zoom in really quickly. So I like to use this when I'm looking over a massive data set and need to hone it down to a small amount. I can kind of drag these together and then it'll automatically zoom itself in so I can see it with a little bit more granularity, just so we can get the baseline for our case here set to the right path. So it looks like this right here is kind of the path that we're interested in. Leave it over right about there. Then I can come into the time frame filter for this particular case, copy from playback slider, save and apply. Now the baseline case data that we're looking at is just that filter time frame. So if I press play on the whole case, I'm in advanced mode, so it zoomed in really quickly. Turn off advanced mode. It's now just playing that path back from start to finish linearly. We can adjust the playback speed if we want to just go a little faster, etc. Now we have a good start to end path for this particular case. First thing I want to go in here and denote is the suspect's home, which I believe was in this neighborhood over here. This one right here. So I can add a quick label, which is different than an event. I'll talk about that in a second, but we can just label the suspect's home statically. And that's going to give us a reference of where it is in time. But for this case, we just want to add a couple of events to the case. So as he starts departing, I'm going to add an event, let's see. As he starts making his way up the highway, let's figure out when that kind of was here. Looks like it's maybe right about there is when he departs. I'm going to add an event that says suspect departs. Then I can take any evidence that I had for this. In this case, it was suspect vehicle leaving video. Drag and drop that into the event. Press save. I've got my first event. Now I want to get an LPR hit that we had later on this path, right about here. Second event, LPR hit. I can drag my media into this one as well. When I press save on this now, it's kind of smartly building this case out with the relevant location data in between each one of these events. So you're not going to have to go in and do a lot of manual effort here. You really just click each location and add an event. But then for this narcotics case, the suspect arrives at the supplier's home, which was this one right here. So one more event. You can say arrives at supplier's home. One more piece of video, the Ring doorbell footage there. Go ahead and press save on that. It's going to zoom me out, but real quick, it might be nice also to have just a label here for supplier's home. So now if I press X on this and I zoom back out to the whole case, we've got the whole thing. We can play it back just as we could before. I'll accelerate it because we've seen it a few times, but the events are included in there. And more importantly, we can just press start on that presentation. It's going to take us to the very first event. We can play the location data for that first event, or we can play this video, or both at the same time. We can press next. It's going to show us the data in between number 1 and number 2. Then we can see him arriving at the supplier's home. We can zoom in here. And there's all sorts of customization on these events if you wanted it to kind of start zoomed in here or start with a different time range that we added recently. So it's kind of a new feature. And but yeah, that's the gist of it. That's how you create a basic case. You can imagine here if it was more complex, we'd basically just be clicking more places on the map. We could add an additional path if we had an additional mobile device for the victim or the supplier, or maybe just a corroborated piece of evidence like CDR records. And they'll appear as different colors and played exactly the same way as a single path here. And before I hand it off to Mr. Allgire, I am going to just talk briefly about one other thing that a lot of folks are interested in when we talk to them about Lumyx, and it is CDRs. So the cool thing about CDRs, it's not just points on a map, as we all know. There's a lot more to it. You drag and drop the whole warrant return with this, from the CDRs. You can include any sort of external tower list you might have, but you're going to get the exact same experience. So you just press play on the data. It's going to show you the path. In this case, I did hone it down to a nice path of travel between 2 towns. It's going to show you the path that that device took, which towers it connected to, denoted by them kind of glowing white on the map here. You can do the same really quick analysis over time by dragging the slider around. You can do the exact same thing where you're clicking, adding events, adding labels. But before you start creating your case, you can come in here and do some pretty in-depth CDR analysis. So we support all the different CDR paradigms. We have timing advances here, which are denoted by these arcs. We have the individual, whoops, I just turned the towers off. We have all the individual sectors for those towers. You can look at top towers, top contacts, things like that. Each time you hover over a tower, it's just going to show you just a preview of that tower's events, and including any of the timing advance arcs. You can click into it. You can, do some deeper investigation individually by CDR events. Like in this case, see I'm hovering over the timing advance records. I'm seeing it on the map. At the bottom there, I'm also seeing a preview in time of the start and end timestamp bars of that. So if I wanted to go find that, I want to kind of hone in on this time period here and see which direction they were going. You can do that and dig deeper, declutter the map by zooming into time. And yeah, that's just a quick rundown of CDR. But the purpose of CDR, although we did build this full analysis suite for CDR in particular, it's really to build your case presentations on top of. So you can do your analysis, you can add your events, add any additional evidence you might have, and you're going to get the exact same Lumyx experience that we just showed you for the other 2 cases. But each time you press next, you're going to be getting tower data and estimated locations in between them instead of just regular lat-long data points. And with that, that summarizes my demo. I would like to give an introduction to John Allgire, who met us back at the Northwest ICAC conference last year when he was interested in our infamous 3D printed dragons that we keep at the booth. Since then, we've actually been working a lot together. He's been an incredible mentor for us, teaching us like a lot of the different real ways in which a Lumyx case can be built and taken to trial. And he actually put a case together, which about a month ago or 2 months ago now was taken to trial. And I won't steal any of his wind here because he's got a lot of interesting things to talk about.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Hawk. So yeah, we had a homicide investigation in Whatcom County, Washington State. So depending where you're from, it's the furthest north into the border of Canada. Population about 220,000. The major city here is Bellingham, is 100,000. And I work for the prosecutor's office. If you can hit the next slide. Just so you guys know who I am, I was a patrol deputy in 2001, hired after I went to college, and then I did some CSI, major crimes detective, with the training in interviewing children, and then we're all generalists, so we did everything all the way up to murders. In 2011, I took on the heyday of forensics, back when you could actually get a lot out of a phone. Had some great times with that. Did dead box forensics, and then in 2022, I actually retired from the sheriff's office and got hired with the prosecutor's office. And my position is to take what we did as an investigator and then apply it to the courtroom and take what we all see and what we know in that piece of it, explain it to lawyers who need to understand it. But then really the most important part is making juries understand. And so I did meet Alec at an ICAC conference. I was down there and I did see the 3D printing. I'm a 3D printing nerd. And then he said, "Can I show you my product?" And what he showed me was that early demo, very early demo of a timeline. And so in looking at timelines is something that I've been challenged with presenting as an investigator, and now in my current job of how do we take a case and make it make sense? Because I have my understanding of it. I have a deep understanding of it, and I want to make it digestible. So in my new position, because I inherited all the surrounding agencies, homicides during COVID, we had 30 something homicides stacked up waiting for courts. I inherited another 30, and then over the course of time, we've been slowly working through them. So I don't carry a caseload. I just work on the next case they give me. And in October, when I met Alec, I was working on how do I take AT&T Nelos data that I was semi-familiar with, and how do I present that? It was only 160 points, but it was kind of imperative to our case, which I'll show you. So I kind of touched on this. One of the biggest things I've worked with is trying to figure out how do you do a timeline. If you've ever tried to build one in PowerPoint or these other programs you can buy, they just don't have enough teeth to give you an understanding of what you're looking at. And usually what happens is you have a PowerPoint and then you have media separate. And so Lumyx for me was great because we could actually pull things in and display them just as you guys saw. I won't even talk. The demo is just, it's getting better as we go. But talking about cell location information, the volume of those returns, what do we have in that last one? I've had one with 24,000 location pieces of it. It's just a lot. And doing it on a static map for me was difficult because you had inbound and outbound, you had overlapping, and you can't do that statically. You can't identify if this is an outgoing dot or an ingoing dot. But now with that slider, you can move it. So I was hooked immediately. We talked in October. We were supposed to go to trial in November. I was on the 2-week trial. And I'm building my case, and I'm thinking, oh man, after 2 weeks, what's going to happen? But Alec worked with me, and we ended up doing the trial just recently in February because everything gets moved for that part of it. But organization analysis, all those things, I tried out multiple cases. Another homicide we had, I threw in data that we had never analyzed, and I found things in that case that I thought we had fully investigated, and found new information in that using Lumyx for analysis, dwell time, where we could have looked for evidence, that kind of stuff. So it really kind of piqued my interest. But again, we're looking at this in a couple different ways. Is how do you get this into a court? How do you get it into a trial? So the overall presentation for us is a rule in Washington. And in this case, oh, you're fine. Next one.
All right.
You're doing great with moving. So the murder we had is State versus Mercy. It was a body dump case. Literally no identity on the victim. Literally a body dump in a park in our area. It covered 3 counties in Washington State, which I'll show you on Lumyx. And so just the difficulty of explaining where we think the murder occurred and where his body was dumped and how it relates was already a challenge for us. So you do Google Maps, you do PowerPoint, you do all these different pieces of it. But then we had the twist of the cell phone data that we were trying to integrate and get in there. We had multiple investigation agencies. I'm not kidding. When we had 100 gigabytes of digital evidence in this case, cell phone data. It was a homeless person, so they didn't have a lot of cell phone data on their side of things, but enough. The suspect didn't have a ton of data, but the victim's information was what we came out of. It was historical. 1,100 pages of discovery. So you talk about, as an investigator, you do your snippet, but then the courts get all of it. And then we have to go through all the defense records and all the pieces of it. But, trying to summarize that. And we had 80 plus state witnesses prepped for this trial. And so you imagine the difficulty of organizing a case. And so what we did with Lumyx is it started off with just cell phone analysis, but then when I saw the timeline, I said, hey, let's just build it out. We can cut it down if we need to. And so I started building our roadmap of where we wanted our investigation to be displayed and how we wanted the jury to hear about our case. And so I was able to go through and create events. Here's a witness, here's this, here's surveillance footage, and you'll see it in a moment, I think next couple slides, but we were able to do that. And so we had a 6-week trial. We had 430 admitted exhibits. So that's going to be crime scene photos, literally on a projector, old school, but that's so we can give the jury the ability to see those things. We had surveillance footage that we played, we had cell phone data, we had documents, and all these different things come in there. And so how do you take this massive dump of information and give it to 12 or 14 people, in this case, jurors, who don't have any concept of what they're looking at, and you're getting it in this, what I call a kaleidoscope of evidence. It's out of order, multiple days, witnesses cut in half. And so it just becomes taxing for a person who's not in our world to understand it. So Lumyx gave me the ability to put it in a timeline in that piece of it. And we built the entire case as, what do we need to get in there? And again, we had to challenge that. So cell phone data is kind of our breadcrumbs that we followed. And then what did we find as an investigation surrounding that? So next slide on that. So this is the actual exhibit we used in trial. What you can barely see, because the zooming in portion of it is on the left side, is literally the exhibit number. So what I was able to do is watch the trial and then take what we had kind of road mapped out and then add an exhibit number to those pieces of it. So the jury had already been exposed to all of the evidence. And now I'm able to recall and say, remember exhibit 242, that's going to be this video surveillance. Remember that piece of it. But you can see the difficulty we have is 3 counties across that piece of it, linking evidence and surveillance footage that makes no sense because it came out in a kaleidoscope, because the laying foundation for the witness of, oh, this is my business, I had the video, I gave it to detective so-and-so, then that person testifies. Then you get to play it and talk about the analysis. Well, that's 2 weeks ago. Well, where was this video? When did it happen? Why is the timestamp off? That's what Lumyx gave me, is the ability to say, remember exhibit 242 was that surveillance footage that you saw. Go ahead to the next slide. I freeze?
No, that was
there. You go. So you can see exhibit 44 and exhibit 294 is Callan's restaurant. And so what I was able to do, and this is actually from the video that we took while I presented, we were able to show the suspect in the middle and what I call the media pane, and then the timeline on the left side, and then the map on the right side, the satellite image. But I was able to say that, don't just trust me when I'm talking to you about this. You need to look at what I can see and why I know these maps are accurate. You can see like there's 4 or 6 dots on the left side. You can see them represented in the map. You can see those bollards in the road and the curve of the road. And you can see the perspective that the camera would have. And so I can drop a juror member into not just this footage and the date and the time as it's represented on the timeline. I can actually give them the perspective that most of our jurors are used to seeing. If I go tell you I'm going to meet you at a restaurant, most people look it up, try to find what the business looks like through Google Maps. We can kind of give them that experience using Lumyx. And again, you can see all the number of things we had on the left side. You can see the media we had. We had 4 videos or 3 videos in this, and then some documentation for that, for the cart that she used, but to identify. If you hit the next slide for me. So this Callan's restaurant was previously just on the right side of the map, and then we had a ferry terminal where this person was hanging out, the suspect was walking around. And what I'm showing you here is exhibit 199 is this image, but it was testified by Washington State ferry worker Craig Simmons. And so I'm able to take a jury and recall, hey, do you remember when this guy told you he saw her walking through this piece of it? She's identified back to that previous video. This is the relationship spatially between the surveillance footage and where she was at, and when Craig Simmons talked about her and testified about that. But I can also put that on the map at the same time, and you can see the little icons of the surveillance footage or an icon of whatever it is, and it gives you that piece of it. But it also gives me, if you can see on the left side, the next icon is a phone. So it actually prepares me as a person who's testifying as what my next slide would be in this one, or the next event, which would have been a phone call to put our suspect and our victim in proximity. And so that's just one of the examples of those pieces of it where you take something that's already been testified to and you put it in front of them in a real manner. And again, Craig Simmons would have been our 3rd witness testifying before we even found the body because he wasn't available. Or some version of that where his testimony was out of order. But I was able to come in background side with the cell phone records and the connection to that and put it back in order for our jury. If you hit the next slide for me. So we're talking about a cell phone record of a ping, if you want to call it that, or cell phone location data from Nellos back in the day. It was actually pretty bad data. The horizontal accuracies in the 5,000 meters, but it was enough for us to corroborate that data. But you can show The very bottom portion of it is Whidbey Island, and then our body dump up in Semiahmoo just below the Canadian border, showing the ability to have those pieces connected up. But then I'm able to throw the record in there, the actual admitted exhibit number 36, which is the approximate location information for his phone. I'm able to bring them back and then say at any point, if you have a question about this, you're looking at the lat long. And again, you can expand these and zoom into them. And I was able to do that live while I was testifying. But you can give the jury the understanding of, you're going to get this document, but you won't be able to digitize it. But we did that for you. We did the work to show you what this looks like. And so you can see those pieces of it. So I threw the record in there as the exhibit they're going to have back there. So they'll have that sense memory of where it was. Next slide. Again, the horizontal accuracy of this was pretty brutal, but what was able to we were able to do with this is throw this location information that was in the middle of the bay, which obviously isn't accurate, but we had corroborating data of him her on the surveillance footage driving the van. And so what you'll see in this part is an exhibit 119 and 235. Those are going to be two different video cameras. The internal cameras are displayed in the bottom portion, and I'd walk them through how I identified this vehicle, how I was able to say that that's the correct vehicle, that we are tracking it, and those pieces of it. And you can see as we're moving down the timeline, we're going to be following along where these people are at, or where this van was at, or where this phone was at, and connecting those dots. But we were able to connect things like surveillance footage that, again, had been testified out of order with a timeline of the movement of that van and showing that piece of it. I think next slide is good. Going back, we utilized it in a couple different ways where we had the timeline of the phone, but then we had investigative things that came for corroboration of this data. What we're displaying in this portion of this was where the victim had parked his van. He was a homeless individual who had parked his van in the same location. We were able to go to the crime scene photographs and actually show where his van had been parked over the oil stains. And in that way, we were able to say that we had testimony. You can actually see the tiny little glasses. That's an eyewitness testimony. I was trying to be, give the jury something to latch onto. Eyewitness testimony who told us this is the location. So then our detective goes out, finds that. What we actually found in that picture and what I would have sequenced through is the shell casing. So our detective gets a witness testimony. We go out, we look at the scene, and we found a shell casing that tied the scene where he was shot up to that piece of it. I just saw a question when we were testifying in court. Washington allowed me to testify using Lumyx live. I think Alec could talk to about they're doing an offline product where we could create this and then have it offline. We were able to use it online at the time, able to go to the website, log in, do the whole process. And then we actually had a screen recording, which is now included in this, and we just recorded it for the appeals court side of things. So that's that part of it. I think I only have a couple more slides, and I'd love to answer questions. What is the next slide? So looking at that piece of it, what was interesting for us is we had this case that it was a whodunit initially, but then the sequence gave us the ability to show that this person's responsible in every way. And then what it left for us is what we always get challenged with is intent or how that piece of it. But Lumyx gave me the ability to show this is where the suspect was at one point, and this is a relationship to a person who was in cell phone data in proximity. And so it gave me that kind of that cascading effect of showing where these people came and collided, kind of like, a meteor strike where this is where the extreme violence occurred. And then we followed the train and then we found his dead body. And then we found the van and we kind of put it all together. But being able to demonstrate that spatially in a timeline that made sense and tracking two meteors coming together and hitting in that way was what was so challenging and daunting initially, and then became very easy once we created our timeline. So they found her guilty. I'll hit the next slide, I think. Yep. That's the details. Our jury in this case, they had forensic data, they had all the other pieces of it. And I like to say this is if you're an investigator and you had your case and you go to a trial and you see what makes it in, it's a summary of a summary of a summary. And it's only the stuff that they allow you to testify to at some point. I had portions of this redacted by my judge about 14 minutes before I was supposed to testify. And luckily I was able to call Alec and say, how do I fix this? We've added features to do that because it was something that we didn't expect to have happen. But the judge saying, thank you so much for what you've given us. I don't want to see these 5 points because I think that they're not weighed in or whatever court rule that portion of it is. So we went back, I cleaved them out, reloaded the new path, and then went in and testified. But the jury feedback we got from this was really interesting to me because the whole thing I said in the very beginning is a timeline is so challenging. And it's so hard to get something that's digestible. But again, you're taking things that I think digitally people recognize. They watch Netflix, they do those pieces of it. And so they want to see something that looks like what they're expecting. No one's used to hearing people talk about it. But as we look at that, the structure and the evidence and the testimony all came back to a digestible format. And I'm hearkening back to, hey, remember when this person testified? If my jury was really paying attention, which I kind of like laid out a little thick, was like, hey, here's exhibit whatever. I gave them the ability to take what exhibits they had and place them in order from their notes as they're going through, and they could rebuild our timeline as we wanted them to see it. So again, it gave them that piece of it. It allowed the visual learners to follow along, and the people who couldn't follow along because they couldn't see the screen or some version of that, it gave the other jurors the ability to kind of bring them up to speed. Again, we had planned their notes. Oh, so we found out from the jury that they had planned to just basically do what we were doing for them. They had planned to kind of pool their notes and put the things that they thought in the order that they remember it was. And then literally I was the last person to testify. They said there was no need at that point. We got it. We understood. We followed along. We highlighted. We ticked them off as we went. People were numbering. And what the jury said at the very end, because we get to talk to them in Washington, was it easily saved us a day of deliberation. And again, it allowed them, we didn't get stuck in the weeds of, well, when did this happen? Or how did that happen? Or how does this make any sense? They just said, let's just go back to the brass tacks of what was their intent for that piece of it. So for us, the feedback we got immediately was, it just made it understandable. It put it in a timeline that they could digest, and it put it down to the very difficult thing that we always wrestle with, which is intent for our case. I think next slide. So this is what I'm super excited about. First one in the books, got it guilty. Awesome. Our judge just gave her the max sentence, which was unheard of in Washington. That's a whole separate thing I won't get into. But future plans for Lumyx. If you have cold cases in your agency, some of those cold cases, people investigate for years. I'm sorry, I'm running late on time, but they investigate for years, and they take that institutional knowledge when they retire. And you can call them back in and they can look at it. But if they've ever built a war room with all these things up there and that piece of it, Lumyx is a digital war room. You can digitize your case. You can put it in order. You can bring people up to speed. You can bring new investigators in and show them a portion of an investigation. We're doing that on multiple of our cold cases, and it's amazing. The ability to relay it to new investigators or AUSAs if we get a federal prosecution or a new prosecutor who comes in because they've rotated out, or bring someone to speed and then get their feedback. Where do you see the holes? Because you have a visualization of, well, I want to know what happened from this time to this time. Why are you guys not looking in that part of it? It gives you that ability to go look for new leads. We've used it as a case plea negotiation tool already. We created a Lumyx case, and what it was is it's a rape case where a suspect had his Snapchat data. So we dropped it in, and we could see that what he told us and what his data said were not jiving. And so we were able to show, and I actually took two paths. I carved one out. And I said, this is what was in his statement, and this is what he omitted. And the omission is exactly the time of the rape, corroborates the victim's statement. It tells us all the pieces we needed to know. And why would he give us a statement that eliminates that and takes that out? We have pitched that out to the defense attorney, and they have no answer. If the last thing I'll say is the first version of this was a detective looking at it and saying, he was actually at this house at this time because he took a selected point and put it down there. And the defense's answer to that was, oh no, he was hacked. And the girls put his location data on that one point. Well, when you show the points intervening, when he left his house and they don't have a vehicle, so he's driving at 40 miles an hour, and you can do the timetable and figure that out, it takes that and blows it out of the water. So we're waiting for that. So we're going to get the ability to cut down alibis and cut down pieces of information and then put it in front of them and say, you don't make our victims testify. This is what we're going to present. How are you guys going to fight it? It's been amazing for that part of it. Controlled substance homicide, something in Washington. Again, those meteors talking about two paths, victim, suspect come together, victim's phone drops off, and then suspect goes to another dealer, does another drug deal, and then you can show text messaging, arranging it, real time, how that connected up, and then talk about someone's death. Those are the first two pieces we have. But again, major crime lines, I use your guys' word. The timeline piece of it, of identifying things. I think I've mentioned it. A previous homicide, we're still looking for the gun. It doesn't mean the case is done. I want that gun. And so we've reanalyzed cases to see where did they go after homicide, and then sent people out to look. And so the ability to do that, and it doesn't take a ton of effort either. I just dropped the KMZ file in, and I was like, holy, I didn't know they turned this way. I didn't know they drove over here. I didn't know they stopped at this guy's house. So leads and all those pieces of it. The last thing I'll say, and it's not my idea, I never take credit for it, was one of our officers saw this and he said, real time, you throw this up there as a crime is happening or as an investigation is dropping out, and you have a shift that's happening. So, every shift stops on Sunday and the new shift takes over. You lose momentum sometimes if people don't understand the investigation. They're not in it. They're not working it. New shift comes on. If you have this up and running and you have one person who can explain it or somebody who can walk through it, you can see where that neighborhood's been canvassed. You can see if they've had results. You can have officers individually placing events on what they've done, investigative steps, and what needs to be done as it comes up. And you could have that built, and you could keep it as a note, kind of like people use OneNote, and you could have that going. But if the case does go cold, God forbid, you have that preserved of what was done at the time and why you did it, and some of those pieces of it come in. And again, it's just, for me, the future of where we're going with Lumyx, and it keeps getting better. I had not seen the CDR, and that's something that we're talking about. Whether or not somebody in my agency testifies to CDR data, and then I just relay it in a summary fashion. How you get it in front of a jury is another question we had. But if you ever made a PowerPoint and presented it, those same rules apply because it's user-generated data placed in a way that's understandable. In Washington, it's the 1006, Evidence Rule 1006, which is summary of voluminous information, which is fun to say, but all it means is something that's really complex, I can summarize, and the judges allowed it. And so that's what we did. So I think
Yes,
that's it. So
yeah.
thank you. Sorry about the time.
No, John. I mean, it's
ultra
compelling. So, yeah, congratulations and thank you.
No, thank you.
Tons of gratitude from our side, and I'm just glad I'm glad it was a huge benefit for you, and thank you. I think Alec may have just put in the chat. John will regret this, but he has certainly kindly offered his email address. So for anyone on the call that wanted to follow up and just ask either about this case or about his experiences, thank you, John, for that. And yeah, appreciate you. Just really quickly, for those that don't know, it is much like many of the software products you're procuring today. It's an annual subscription software license. It is web-based, hosted in AWS. We do it in user blocks, and starting with our base package, which is a $6,000 a year. There's no strings attached to any of this. It can be as many cases, as many pieces of media. So there's no limitation on storage. So it's kind of an all-you-can-eat per user license. It scales up to 50 users. These three generally seem to fit a lot of the bills so far. Hexordia is an important industry partner. If you know Jessica Hyde, they've also put together for us a free Lumyx Essentials training course. I put the link down here at the bottom. It takes about 25 minutes to get through about 5 modules to just be certified on the use of the product and get you acquainted with it. Our big ask is very simple. It's you have the opportunity to go out and do a trial yourself. But we would, of course, love to do a kind of a guided onboarding session, just ride shotgun with you, bring a real case to the test, and schedule an opportunity to do that deep dive. On the website, I think the website does a wonderful job of just sort of cleanly outlining our capabilities and gives nice visual engagement if you want to share that with any of your colleagues. But lumyx.com/trial or start trial now will take you to a free 15-day 2-week trial. And lastly, we stayed right on time. I'm super grateful for everyone that joined us today, and hopefully we will see you out on the road. Mine and Alec's emails are right here on the screen. And next week, we're at the Magnet User Summit, and then off to Boston to the National Cybercrime Conference. And then we'll be joining John for the Washington Homicide Investigators conference, followed by June at Technosecurity down in Wilmington. So that's sort of the next couple of months. But much gratitude. Follow up via email with any additional questions. And that concludes our webinar. Thank you all so much.